The chamber of the Concord Council shimmered like a cathedral of stars. Holograms of suns and banners of 100 worlds hung in the air above rows of alien dignitaries. The air was heavy with perfume from flora worlds, spiced fumes from methane breathers, and the faint tang of ozone from shields that guarded the chamber. At the far end sat the delegation of Earth. Their numbers were small, an ambassador, 2 aides, and 1 man in uniform standing behind them like a shadow carved from steel. Captain Marcus Hale, Green Beret, 34 years old, watched the chamber with the sharpness of a sniper. His hands were folded behind his back, boots polished but scarred from real ground, his expression calm. He had been trained for jungle ambushes and orbital drop warfare, yet now he stood guard in the glittering core of galactic politics. The whispers of contempt drifted toward him. Words like primitives and upstarts, carried in languages humans were not meant to understand, but Hale caught the tone even when the words were alien. The council tolerated Earth's presence, nothing more. At the heart of the gathering, a towering reptilian figure rose from his throne. Scales black as obsidian gleamed under the lights, and his voice carried like a war drum. General Vadran Crass of the Dravathi. He did not wear robes of diplomacy. Instead he came armored, ridged pauldrons rising like serrated cliffs around his neck. He looked less like a statesman and more like a conqueror who had wandered into the wrong building by mistake. Counselors, Vadran began, his slitted eyes narrowing toward the human delegation. We speak today of resource rights on the Rim colonies. Yet what claim does a child have on the inheritance of empires? Humanity is a flicker in the dark, still fumbling with engines, still blind to the weight of responsibility. And yet here they sit, demanding equal say. Laughter rippled across several rows. Amphibian delegates clicked their jaws, avian representatives rustled their feathers in mocking applause. Earth's ambassador, a silver-haired woman named Calder, rose slowly. General, Earth does not demand. Earth contributes. We have earned our seat through exploration, through defense of our colonies, and through the blood of our people standing alongside Concord fleets. That is the foundation of this chamber, mutual sacrifice. Her words were measured, each one wrapped in restraint. Hale could sense the controlled tension in her tone, the kind that carried through military debriefings after casualties. Vadran tilted his head, the movement predatory. Sacrifice? Humans speak of sacrifice as though they alone bleed. Do not mistake skirmishes and colonial scraps for war. True war is etched into my scales, Ambassador. Your kind has never known it. A low growl of agreement rose from his reptilian subordinates scattered in the chamber. Calder did not flinch. We know enough to recognize arrogance. And we know enough to stand. The words tightened the air. Hale shifted slightly, scanning the chamber. He saw smug faces, expectant grins, waiting for the next jab. Vadran did not disappoint. He strode down from his dais with deliberate steps, claws ringing against the polished floor. Each step echoed louder than the last, until he stood in front of Earth's row. His bulk towered over Calder, but his gaze slid past her to fix on the man in uniform behind. You! His voice rumbled like tectonic plates grinding. The soldier. Do you believe yourself worthy of standing here, among civilizations older than your son? Hale met his gaze without a flicker. I stand where my people send me. A few aliens muttered at the audacity. Vadran's jaw twisted into what might have been a smile. Such courage in words. But words are air. Then, without warning, his clawed hand lashed forward. The impact cracked like a gunshot as his scaled palm struck across Hale's face. The sound reverberated through the chamber, silencing every whisper, every laugh. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Hale did not raise a hand. He did not stagger, did not break eye contact. His head had turned with the force, but he straightened slowly, locking his gaze on Vadran. The silence stretched, cold and merciless. Whispers erupted in the gallery. Some species hissed with laughter, others shifted uneasily. A handful watched Hale not with mockery but with wariness, as though they recognized the danger of a man who refused to react. Calder's voice broke the tension. Captain? We're leaving. She rose, gathering her aides. Hale stepped back into position, face unmarked, expression carved from stone. He followed his delegation as they turned their backs on the chamber. Not a single word of protest left their mouths. Vadran chuckled, spreading his arms to the council. Behold! The mighty humans! Easily cowed. Laughter returned, but it rang thinner now, forced, like nervous students laughing at a cruel teacher's joke. As the human delegation's footsteps faded, the chamber slowly returned to order. Yet an unease lingered. The stillness in the soldiers' eyes remained burned into the minds of those who had seen it. Later, in the quiet of Earth's quarters aboard their embassy ship, Hale stood at the viewport staring into the void. Stars drifted across the glass, each one a reminder of the vastness that judged humanity daily. His reflection stared back, calm, scarred, silent. Calder approached, her voice low. I'll file the diplomatic protests. The council will bury them, but procedure matters. Hale didn't move. He struck me not to wound me, but to humiliate Earth. To show we would take it. She exhaled, weary. And we did. Hale turned then, eyes steady, voice stripped of doubt. For now. But no one strikes a green beret and walks away. Not in my lifetime. Not in humanity's. He looked back at the stars, the chamber lights from Zerith Prime glowing faintly on the horizon. His jaw clenched as he whispered words meant for no one but himself. They laughed today. Tomorrow, they'll remember the cost of that laughter. The human embassy ship hung in high orbit over Zerith Prime, a quiet silhouette against the endless glow of the Ecumenopolis world. From its windows, the planet sprawled below, a sea of lights stretching across continents, a monument to galactic unity. Inside, the mood was far from united. Ambassador Calder paced the strategy chamber, hands clasped tight behind her back. She had faced hostile delegations before, but never an open assault in the council chamber. Every step she took echoed with frustration. Diplomatic protocol demands we file a grievance. The council will investigate, deliberate, and bury it. Marcus Hale interrupted, seated at the end of the long metal table. His voice was calm, but each word struck like a nail hammered into wood. They'll bury it, Ambassador, like every insult before. That's the pattern. They mock us, we protest, nothing changes. Her gaze hardened. The Concord is a system of order. If we abandon procedure, we become the barbarians they say we are. Hale leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. Respect isn't won by filing papers. It's earned in ways these people understand, decisive, irreversible ways. The aides glanced nervously between them, caught between protocol and the soldiers' steel certainty. Calder stopped pacing. And what do you propose? That we declare war on the Concord over one strike? That we throw away everything we've built? Hale rose slowly. He wasn't tall compared to most species, but the weight in his presence filled the room. Not war. Message. Silence hung heavy. One of the aides whispered. Message? He nodded. One soldier was struck in front of their council. That insult wasn't to me. It was to Earth. And if Earth does nothing, then tomorrow they'll take our colonies. Next year, they'll dictate our fleets. 10 years from now, we'll be a protectorate in all but name. This isn't about honor. It's survival. Calder exhaled sharply, rubbing her forehead. She knew the truth of his words, even if every instinct of diplomacy urged restraint. And what kind of message do you imagine will change their minds? Hale answered with the same certainty he carried into combat. One they'll never forget. Hours later, the embassy ship's communication chamber glowed with pale light. Hale stood alone before the console, his figure stark against the cold projection screens. He typed deliberately, crafting each word with precision, no excess, no threat that could be dismissed as bluster. The transmission, when finished, was only a single line. One human was struck. One world will fall. Remember this. He pressed send. The message vanished into the relay network, spreading through secure channels to every Concord delegate. Behind him, Calder entered quietly. She had read the words already. Her voice was tired. Do you realize what you've just done? Hale didn't turn. Yes. They'll laugh at this. They'll mock us louder than ever. He faced her then, his expression carved from stone. Let them. 10 minutes after the laughter begins, they'll understand. In the vast chamber of the Concord Council, laughter did indeed erupt. Delegates replayed the human transmission, repeating the line with exaggerated tones. Avian voices squawked it like a song, insectoid delegates clicked their mandibles in parody. General Vadran sat on his throne, scales gleaming with satisfaction. Pathetic, he sneered. Their soldier swallows humiliation, then threatens annihilation. Empty words from empty species. He raised his claw for silence, grinning. We should thank them for the entertainment. Some delegates laughed freely, but a few remained quiet. A counselor from the Kthiri Alliance whispered to her neighbor. Do you not see his eyes? The soldier's eyes? I've seen predators before. That was no bluff. Her neighbor brushed it aside. Humans exaggerate. Always. Yet the unease spread like smoke. On the human side, the embassy ship's command deck came alive with encrypted traffic. Hidden orders pulsed across secure channels, reaching deep into the Sol system. Massive constructs, dormant for years, awakened. In Earth's orbit, the Aegis Array, a ring of orbital cannons camouflaged as communications platforms, rotated for the first time in decades. In the Kuiper Belt, dreadnoughts shed their cloaking veils, black holes drinking starlight. Further still, weapon stations long dismissed as failed prototypes adjusted their targeting data. None of it was improvisation. The arsenal had been planned for precisely this moment, not for reckless war, but for deterrence. Humanity had entered the Concorde with smiles, but it had never walked in unarmed. On the deck, a commander's voice came through the comms. Orders confirmed. Dravithcore locked. Readiness in 8 minutes. Hale listened in silence, jaw tight. Around him, aides shifted uneasily, realizing this was not bravado, not posturing, this was real. One aide whispered, Captain, if we do this, if we truly do this, there's no going back. Hale's gaze never left the stars. That's the point. Calder confronted him one last time in his quarters. Marcus, I beg you, stop this. You're about to burn every bridge humanity has built. Do you think destroying a world will make us safer? It could unite them all against us. His eyes softened, but only slightly. Ambassador, bridges built on mockery collapse the first time you lean on them. Today, the galaxy tested us. Tomorrow, they'll remember what it cost them. She shook her head, grief in her features. And what of you? How much does this weigh? Hale's silence was answer enough. He bore the weight like a rucksack in war, heavy, necessary, unshakable. Back in the council chamber, Vadran reclined, reveling in the mockery surrounding him. One world will fall, he repeated with a sneer. Which world? Their own? The laughter surged again, echoing off marble walls. But in orbit, on encrypted channels, timers ticked. Hale stood before the viewport, watching the stars as though reading a clock written in constellations. His voice dropped to a whisper, meant only for himself. 10 minutes. Then the galaxy learns who we are. The chamber of the Concord Council buzzed with derision. Delegates replayed the human transmission again and again, voices dripping with mockery. Some mimicked the phrase, "One human was struck, one world will fall." Their laughter shrill under the vaulted ceiling. General Vadran leaned back in his throne, his scaled arms folded across his chest. Empty bravado, he rumbled. This is what primitives do, bark, hoping the pack believes them dangerous. His followers hissed in agreement. At the far edge of the hall, the human delegation sat in silence. Hale stood behind Ambassador Calder, expression unreadable, eyes fixed forward. He did not shift or blink, as though listening to a sound no one else could hear. Above Dravithcore, the Dravathi homeworld, space shuddered. From the black void, 12 human dreadnoughts emerged in a ripple of slip-space distortions. Their hulls were jagged silhouettes, matte black, designed not for beauty but for annihilation. Engines burned pale blue as they locked formation, orbiting the planet like carrion birds circling prey. Planetary defense stations immediately scrambled. Alarm sirens blared across continents. Shields rose, a shimmering dome wrapping the world in protective light. Armies mobilized. Civilian broadcasts filled the airwaves with confusion. What were humans doing here? On the lead dreadnought, Admiral Wren's voice cut through the calms. Targets confirmed. Commence. The first salvo split the sky. Orbital cannons fired beams that lanced through space, spearing defense satellites and burning them to cinders. Dravathi battlecruisers swarmed, but railgun fire tore them apart in seconds, scattering glowing debris across orbit. Then came the kinetic rods, slender tungsten projectiles, each the size of a city bus. They dropped silently, invisible until they struck atmosphere. When they hit, the world convulsed. Mountains cracked open. Oceans heaved. Cities vanished under plumes of fire brighter than suns. 10 minutes. That was all it took. 10 minutes for Dravathkor's shields to fail. 10 minutes for its oceans to boil, and its continents to split. 10 minutes for every tower, fortress, and city to be erased in incandescent storms. When the final blast faded, nothing remained but a husk of molten crust, glowing red against the void. A planet had ceased to exist. In the council chamber, silence replaced laughter. Holographic feeds of Dravathkor's destruction flickered across the central display. Delegates who had mocked moments ago now stared with horror, their voices stolen. The transmission came next. A human voice, calm, measured, stripped of anger, filled the chamber. This is our restraint. Next time, we will not stop at one world. The message ended. The silence lingered. General Vadron's body stiffened. His scales dulled as the truth struck him harder than Hale's silence ever had. His world, his people's heart, the cradle of their power, was gone. Entire legions, families, generations reduced to ash. He staggered forward, claws scraping the marble floor. His knees buckled, the strength of centuries collapsing beneath the weight of a single decision. No! The word rasped from his throat, broken, stripped of command. Not possible! Yet it was. Everyone had seen it. Ambassador Calder rose, her voice steady though her hands trembled at her sides. You called us children, she said into the silence. Now you see what children of Earth carry in their hands. No delegate answered. Eyes that once mocked now avoided hers, filled with something sharper than respect, fear. A soft murmur spread, they destroyed a world in minutes. They warned us. We didn't listen. One insected counselor leaned toward another, whispering. They are not primitives. They are predators. And they remember every wound. Hale finally stepped forward. His boots echoed across the floor as he moved to the center of the chamber. He turned slowly, sweeping his gaze across the sea of alien faces. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. One strike. That was all it took. One insult, and a world burned. That is humanity's answer. Do not mistake patience for weakness again. His words hung heavy, sharper than any blade. Then he turned and walked back to his place, every step deliberate. Not a soul stopped him. Not a single delegate dared breathe until he sat again, silent as ever. On Zerith Prime, chaos erupted across news networks. Images of Dravathkor's destruction blazed on every broadcast, voices trembling as they reported the impossible. Some cried out for vengeance. Others demanded surrender before humans erased more worlds. Markets collapsed. Fleets scrambled to reposition. But on Earth, the mood was different. From New York to Nairobi, from orbital stations above Mars to colonies circling Titan, humans watched the transmission with quiet pride. For the first time, they were no longer the smallest voice in the galaxy. They were the voice everyone would heed. General Vadron remained kneeling long after the chamber emptied. His claws dug grooves into the polished floor, but his strength meant nothing. He had been the face of arrogance, and now he was the face of ruin. Ambassador Calder watched him from a distance. She felt no triumph, only the weight of necessity. She whispered to Hale as they departed, "This will haunt us." Hale's expression didn't change. "Good. Fear keeps them honest. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, Hale stood again at the viewport. Stars stretched infinite before him, indifferent, eternal. His reflection stared back, unchanged yet heavier. He thought of the 10 minutes that had reshaped the galaxy. He thought of every insult humanity had endured, every slight, every whisper of primitive. Those days were gone. His hand pressed against the glass. His voice was low, steady, the tone of a soldier speaking an oath to himself. Respect isn't given. It's taken. And now they understand.